Lady Colin Campbell just said the one thing Meghan Markle has spent years trying to silence. And this time, it wasn't whispered behind palace walls or buried in a footnote. It was broadcast loud and clear. Alongside Tom Bower, another relentless royal investigator, Lady C dropped a claim that instantly sent shockwaves through royal watchers and even stunned longtime skeptics. At the center of it all, not titles, not tiaras, but the most sacred part of any family, children. Archie and Lilibet, two names that have become symbols of innocence, privacy battles, and carefully controlled PR campaigns. But according to Lady C and Bower's most recent bombshell interview, everything we think we know about those children might not be true. And Meghan, reportedly shaking behind closed doors, scrambling to control the narrative before it spirals completely out of her grasp. So, what did Lady C reveal this time that's caused such uproar? Why is Meghan reportedly panicking? And how does Tom Bower's new confirmation twist the knife deeper into the already strained reputation of the Sussex brand? Let's unravel this step by step. But be warned, once you hear what's been uncovered, you won't look at Meghan and Harry's story the same way again. Lady C isn't new to controversy. In fact, she's built her entire post-royal career on being unfiltered, unapologetic, and some say, dangerously close to truths the palace prefers left buried. But in her most recent sit-down, she didn't hold back. With her signature sharp tone and cool composure, she laid out what she says are undeniable inconsistencies in Meghan and Harry's parenting narrative. The core of her argument? That no one outside of Meghan's curated circle has seen the children in any verified, uncontrolled setting. Not once, not ever. According to Lady C, the public has been asked to accept the existence of children based on filtered images, digital greetings, and birthday blurbs, not actual proof. She continued by asking, when was the last time you saw Archie walk alongside another royal child? Or Lilibet sitting on her grandfather's knee? And then came the line that lit the fuse. I am not saying what they want me to say. I am saying what they fear people will start asking, if they haven't already. Now, to some, this might sound like tabloid gossip. But then Tom Bower stepped in, and when he talks, the press listens. Tom Bower has spent years digging through archives, confronting royal staff, and peeling back the Sussex brand layer by layer. His tone is always clinical, measured, yet what he revealed in tandem with Lady C's claims left people stunned. Bower confirmed that, in all his years of research into Meghan's past and present, he was never able to verify the standard documentation or third-party testimonies that one would normally expect surrounding a royal birth. That's not just odd, that's unheard of. Let's be clear, when Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis were born, the world knew every detail. We saw Kate leaving the hospital, the babies in tow, the media swarming, flashing bulbs, and joyful waving. Even the birth certificates were publicly available. Now contrast that with Archie and Lilibet. No public hospital appearance. No registered royal doctors. No independent confirmation from hospital staff. Just a black and white photo here. A digitally edited image there. And the occasional audio snippet where Harry casually mentions the kids. Lady C and Bower point out that this level of secrecy isn't just unusual. It's deliberate, controlled, possibly even fabricated. And here's where things take a darker turn. You see, the rumors about Meghan using a surrogate didn't start yesterday. They've followed her since that first awkward belly-holding photo op, where the size of her bump appeared to fluctuate between appearances. 1 week, barely there. The next, popping like she was full-term. Photos emerged where her belly folded. Yes, folded, as she squatted down to pick something up. And royal observers, the kind who track protocol like scientists, were baffled. Where was the royal medical staff? They asked. Why weren't traditional maternity announcements made? But every time these questions surfaced, Meghan's legal team was quick to slap down journalists with warnings and threats. Conversations were shut down. Reporters were blacklisted. Theories were mocked as conspiracy. Yet Lady C didn't care. And neither, it seems, does Tom Bower. In their new interview, both of them suggest that it's time the world starts re-examining what it's been told. Lady C went as far as to say, I believe this will one day be looked back on as the greatest deception ever attempted in royal history. Strong words, and words Meghan reportedly took very seriously. According to insiders, Meghan's team scrambled after the interview dropped. Behind the scenes, there were frantic phone calls, rushed briefings, and a sudden uptick in social media activity from Sussex-adjacent influencers, all posting feel-good messages about motherhood and privacy. A coordinated PR cleanup? It certainly looked that way. But if that was the plan, it didn't work. Because the internet isn't buying it anymore. Across YouTube, Twitter, and Reddit, people are no longer whispering their suspicions. They're shouting them. "Where are the kids?" One commenter wrote. "We've seen more of Prince Louis throwing tantrums than we've ever seen of Archie laughing naturally." Another user asked, "Why are there never any videos? Just still shots. Just staged moments." Then there's the Lilibet situation, the baby allegedly named after the late Queen's childhood nickname. But when Meghan and Harry announced her name, insiders say the palace was blindsided. Royal aides quietly told reporters that the Queen had not been asked in advance, and Charles was furious. Why would Meghan risk offending the Queen with a name so personal unless she was rushing to cement a connection that wasn't fully real? Lady C certainly thinks so. In the same interview, she said, "That child was used to solidify a brand, used to create a false sense of belonging to a family they were actively tearing down." And Tom Bower? He simply nodded. Let's not forget that Meghan has sued, and won, over media stories that dared question her narrative. She's taken on tabloids, photographers, even YouTubers. But that's also what makes this so explosive. Because if she's willing to go to such extremes to silence minor speculation, what would she do if the truth actually came out? In private, sources claim Harry is torn. One royal insider reportedly told a UK outlet that Harry didn't fully agree with the decision to withhold public access to their kids, but was pressured to follow Meghan's lead. If that's true, and he's starting to feel regret, this could be the ticking time bomb that finally blows their carefully crafted image apart. And the royals? They've stayed silent. William refuses to speak Meghan's name. Charles keeps a tight grip on royal messaging. Even Camilla, who rarely comments, reportedly once muttered that Meghan's entire motherhood story was a performance. Maybe that was just palace gossip. Or maybe not. Because now the British public, who once welcomed Meghan with open arms, has turned. Polls show plummeting favorability ratings. Even former defenders are beginning to say, "You know what, this doesn't add up." It's not about hating Meghan. It's about accountability. If Meghan and Harry had simply said, "We've chosen to have our children in private," people might have respected that. But instead, they dangled the kids when it suited their brand. Birthday photos with cake, Spotify podcast cameos, and then vanished them when scrutiny came too close. And when someone like Lady C steps up and says, "I don't believe you," suddenly the whole house of cards starts shaking. That's the irony. The couple who wanted privacy are now being haunted by the very questions they refused to answer. As for what happens next, sources say Lady C is not done. She has hinted at releasing more documents, more testimonies, and possibly even first-hand royal accounts that further support her claims. Tom Bower is said to be working on a follow-up project, and rumor has it, a royal staffer who worked closely with Meghan during her alleged pregnancy is preparing to speak out anonymously. Will the truth about Archie and Lilibet ever be publicly confirmed? That remains to be seen. But what's clear now is that the public is no longer satisfied with photo ops and Hallmark captions. They want facts, they want proof, and they want the silence to end. Because at the heart of this isn't just gossip, it's about trust. If Meghan and Harry manipulated the most sacred bond in human existence, parenthood, for fame or PR gain, that's a betrayal that even Hollywood won't forgive. And Lady C knows that. That's why she's not afraid. That's why she speaks. And that's why Meghan may really be shaking. But here's where things get truly unsettling. If this really is all a lie, if Meghan and Harry crafted an illusion around their children, then we're not just dealing with a PR stunt. We're staring down one of the most elaborate, tightly controlled deceptions ever attempted in modern royal history. And the cracks in that illusion? They're starting to show. Let's rewind a bit. When Meghan first announced her pregnancy with Archie, the world erupted in excitement. But almost immediately, there were oddities. Royal tradition was tossed aside. No hospital steps moment. No press briefing. No official royal obstetrician confirming the event, as had been standard for generations. Instead, we got a vague statement about the couple welcoming a baby boy at an undisclosed location, later revealed to be the Portland Hospital in London, a private facility known more for celebrity clients than royal protocol. And even then, there was confusion about the timing. The announcement came hours after the actual birth. The media had already been reporting Meghan was still in labor when, in fact, Archie had already arrived. So, why the deception? Why hide something as joyous as a royal birth? Lady C offered her theory bluntly. You only hide what you're ashamed of or what you're trying to sell. Tom Bower supported that line of thought. In a past segment, he even suggested that the Sussexes might have pre-timed the announcement to control media coverage, ensuring they alone dictated the story, down to the minute. Now think about that. The royal family thrives on transparency. Like it or not, their lives are meant to be public, accountable. It's part of the deal. But Meghan and Harry? They played by Hollywood rules. Carefully filtered images, controlled lighting, watermarked exclusives, and most suspicious of all, digital photos that experts have accused of being airbrushed, manipulated, or staged entirely. This all came to a head during Lilibet's first birthday. The world expected a royal reunion, even if symbolic. But instead, the photo that was released sparked more questions than celebration. It showed Lilibet in what looked like a perfectly curated garden setting, with lighting so soft and filtered that facial details were barely distinguishable. No video, no additional shots, just one solitary image. A single frame of a child that no one had independently seen or verified. And that's when the conversation exploded online. People began asking, are these kids real? Of course. The immediate response from Sussex supporters was outrage. How dare you question their children, they cried. Leave the kids out of it. But here's the thing, no one wants to drag children into the mud. What people want is clarity, honesty, and consistency. What they're seeing instead is smoke and mirrors, carefully staged appearances, and a growing pile of unanswered questions. Even royal insiders have started to admit, off the record, of course, that something doesn't feel right. One former palace staffer, speaking under anonymity, reportedly told a journalist, "We were never shown the baby, not once. Everything was managed by Meghan's team. Security was tighter than the crown jewels." Let that sink in. The royal household, which has seen births, deaths, and every scandal in between, was blocked from interacting with its own family member's child. Why? Lady C has her theory, and it's a bombshell. She claims that Archie and Lilibet might not just be hidden, they might have been created to serve a purpose. A narrative, a tool to secure titles, sympathy, and leverage. I believe, she said in her interview, that the children were part of the brand before they were ever part of the family. And when asked directly if she thought the children were being hidden deliberately to avoid scrutiny or disclosure of their origins, she replied, "Of course, that's the entire point." Tom Bower doubled down, saying, "We've entered an era where reality is curated, and Meghan is a master of the curated image. It's no longer about what's true. It's about what looks true, and that, perhaps, is the most dangerous part of all. Because when perception becomes reality, accountability dies." The most telling moment of all may have come from a brief exchange Meghan had during her infamous Oprah interview. When asked why there was so much secrecy around Archie's birth, she deflected. She claimed she wasn't given the support she needed, that the institution failed her, that she was protecting her child from racism. And yet, even after leaving the monarchy, Meghan didn't suddenly show her children to the world. She didn't step out and proudly say, "Here's my family. This is our truth." Instead, the same level of secrecy continued. The same filtered glimpses, the same blurred backgrounds, the same digital artifacts and photos that left analysts scratching their heads. Even more confusing, on their Netflix docuseries, where Meghan and Harry were supposedly telling their truth, the footage of the children was limited, highly edited, and suspiciously sparse. Blink and you'd miss them. Yet somehow we saw endless scenes of dogs, yoga poses, and designer kitchen counters. It's as if they wanted you to feel something, warmth, love, sympathy, without ever letting you see something. Lady C believes this is intentional. She calls it emotional manipulation at its finest. And the sad part? It worked. Millions of people defended Meghan's motherhood without ever seeing it firsthand. They trusted her tears, her pain, her perfectly lit portraits. They fought for her online. They silenced dissenting voices. But now, even those supporters are beginning to ask, wait a second, were we duped? Let's not forget the role of money here, either. Because this isn't just about children. It's about commerce. Archie and Lilibet have been central to Spotify deals, Netflix contracts, podcast storylines, and even legal arguments. Their existence, or rather, the perception of their existence, has generated millions. And that begs a chilling question. Were these children used to build a brand? Tom Bower, in a separate interview, was blunt. If it turns out that the narrative around the children was distorted, then it's fraud. Emotional fraud, financial fraud, and reputational fraud. This isn't a soap opera anymore. This is about real consequences. Now, imagine what happens if someone inside breaks ranks. If a former nanny steps forward. If a medical professional leaks a document. If a royal family member speaks off the record to a journalist who's willing to take the risk. The entire house of cards comes down. That's why Lady C and Bower's interview matters. Because it isn't just commentary, it's the spark that could light the fuse. And it explains why Meghan is reportedly furious. Not just because they questioned her, but because they dared to do it publicly. With confidence, with receipts. The rumors, the whispers, the skepticism, it's all reaching a boiling point. And for once, the palace isn't rushing in to defend. In fact, their silence is deafening. Many now believe King Charles is playing the long game, letting Meghan and Harry hang themselves with their own contradictions, offering them rope, not rescue. And when that final knot is tied, he'll make his move. Until then, people like Lady C and Tom Bower will keep speaking, keep questioning, keep peeling back the layers, because someone has to. And in the end, one thing is certain. If Meghan and Harry built their house on illusion, the truth is coming. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but it's coming. And when it does, there'll be no hiding behind curated photos, no shielding behind legal threats, no more privacy, shields to duck behind. There'll only be the truth, and the world will finally see what Meghan never wanted them to. And now, the conversation has reached a level no one ever anticipated. What started as quiet speculation, tucked away in the corners of forums and whispered among royal watchers, has become a full-blown, international topic of debate. News outlets, once too cautious to touch these claims, are now reporting on the growing demand for transparency. Podcasts are dissecting Lady C and Tom Bower's claims piece by piece. And YouTube? It's on fire, because the one thing people hate more than being lied to is realizing they defended the lie. It's a hard pill to swallow for many supporters of the Sussexes. For years, people backed Meghan through every criticism, chalking it up to racism, jealousy, or tabloid cruelty. And yes, some of that criticism was ugly, unfair, and rooted in bias. But not all of it. And now, as this potential deception begins to unravel, even some of her most vocal defenders are starting to shift. One viral comment summed it up best. "We stood up for her when she cried about being bullied. But what if it was all scripted?" That's the real heartbreak here. The betrayal isn't just about the royals, or the monarchy, or protocol. It's about public trust. Meghan and Harry had the world's sympathy. They had the moral high ground. They had Oprah. But now, thanks to Lady C and Bower cracking open Pandora's box, that support is melting like ice under a spotlight. And let's not forget the financial implications. If Meghan and Harry's brand starts to crumble under the weight of these allegations, the domino effect could be brutal. Streaming platforms like Netflix and Spotify bet big on the Sussex fairy tale. Millions were poured into docuseries, podcast deals, and branded content centered around their new life and the children who supposedly symbolized hope, healing, and a fresh start. But what if those children were never meant to be seen? What if their very existence, or the story around it, was part of a narrative built more for profit than parenting? Legal experts are beginning to whisper what no one else wants to say publicly. This could become a case study in contractual misrepresentation. If any deal made relied on the image of a family that wasn't truly what it appeared to be, that's a legal minefield. And while suing royalty is complicated, companies might not shy away forever, especially if public pressure builds. Behind closed doors, you can bet lawyers are already preparing both offense and defense. Damage control teams are being briefed. Messaging strategies are being rewritten, because once the illusion cracks in public, you can't put it back together. And what about the monarchy? It's often criticized for being out of touch, cold, or overly formal. But one thing the monarchy does better than anyone else? Wait. They wait. They watch. They endure. The Queen mastered that art. She knew that rushing into a scandal only fanned the flames. Instead, she let time and truth do the heavy lifting. And now, Charles and William are applying that same quiet strategy. No public statements, no interviews, just silence, while the world turns its attention toward Meghan and Harry and starts to see the cracks for themselves. If the palace knows the truth, they'll never be the first to say it. But they'll be the last one standing when everyone else is falling. And that's the most devastating part of all. Meghan may have played a game she thought she could control, but the monarchy? It plays for centuries. Still, there's one more angle that can't be ignored: the emotional toll. Imagine, for a moment, that the rumors are true, that there was a surrogate or some alternative arrangement, and that Meghan and Harry chose to keep it secret to avoid scrutiny or controversy. That's not inherently wrong. Many celebrities choose privacy when it comes to surrogacy or fertility struggles. But where it goes wrong is when deception replaces discretion, where manipulation replaces authenticity, and where image is valued more than integrity. If they had simply told the world, "We had a child via surrogate," the reaction might have been mixed, but it would have been honest. And in today's world, authenticity is more powerful than perfection. Instead, we got silence. Photos that raised eyebrows, stories that didn't line up. And now Lady C and Tom Bower knocking on the door with a megaphone. It didn't have to be this way. That's why the backlash is growing. Not because people hate Meghan, but because people feel tricked, played. And for all her talk of mental health, compassion, and honesty, this situation reeks of the opposite. Some are even wondering what the future holds for Archie and Lilibet if they ever do step into the public eye. Will they become the most overanalyzed children in royal history? Will they be thrust into a media circus because of the secrecy surrounding their beginnings? Or, more hauntingly, will they stay hidden forever? Lady C hinted at this herself. In a recent follow-up statement, she said, "I don't believe we'll ever see those children as we've seen others. They were not brought into the world to play the same role." And that might be the most chilling line of all. Because if true, it confirms what many have feared, that Archie and Lilibet weren't just children born into unusual circumstances. They were symbols, props, strategic chess pieces in a game Meghan and Harry never fully understood how to win. But here's where it gets interesting. What if this is only the beginning? Multiple sources now claim that Lady C has received tips from former royal staffers who are finally ready to talk. And Bower? He's rumored to be compiling an updated dossier, possibly for a sequel to his already best-selling royal exposé. If those claims are true, if documentation, testimony, or new insider statements come forward, the story explodes again. The first wave was skepticism. The second wave was pushback. But the third wave? That's when the truth surfaces. And once it does, it won't matter how many slick PR videos Meghan posts. It won't matter how many times Harry gives soft focus interviews about trauma and therapy. It won't matter if Oprah herself steps back in to ask more sympathetic questions. The public will have made up its mind. Because truth doesn't need a title. It doesn't need a duchess or a prince. It just needs time. And right now, time is the one thing Meghan can't control. So, where does this leave us? In a place no one expected. With a royal scandal so bizarre, so layered, so deeply emotional, that even veteran royal reporters are struggling to find comparisons. This isn't Edward VIII abdicating for love. This isn't Fergie getting caught on camera. This is new territory. A modern monarchy facing a modern deception. Fueled by clicks, protected by lawyers, and exposed by the very people who were once expected to stay silent. Lady C and Tom Bower have changed the conversation. And in doing so, they've done what no amount of tabloid gossip ever could. They've cracked the story wide open. And now, we wait, because Meghan may be shaking. But the truth? It's standing tall. And it's not going anywhere.